Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hammer Podcast. Please make sure to subscribe to keep the channel growing. It is most appreciated. Today is May 24th, 2020, and I am speaking with Elena. Elena also attended the Victory Christian Academy in Jay, Florida in the early 2000s, and she has some similar and some alternate versions of what happened at Victory Christian Academy. Now, she has made it clear to me that she is not defending this home. She is merely, in her own words, telling her version of what happened there. And she would also like to emphasize that there was no corporal punishment at the Victory Christian Academy. So with that said, let's listen to Elena's story.
So my grandparents founded the school. Mike Palmer's my grandfather, unfortunately. He founded it in 85, I believe it was. They are correct about the lesser roll-off teachings. He was basing it off of that. I don't know if he was inspired or what, but he started the school off of the base teachings of lesser roll-off, and they did start in Ramona. Now, I don't have much or any memory of that because I wasn't even born yet. I was born in 89. So any kind of stories or anything like that about Ramona from girls, I can't really comment on. I don't have much information about that. I just heard hearsay from my parents or, people that worked there, or girls that went to school there. But my main experiences were from the 01 to the 07, 08 period.
Okay.
Victory Christian Academy in Jay, Florida. So when he moved it to Florida, that's when I have basically all of my main memories and experiences. My parents moved us out to Jay when I was 12 to work for the girls' school. My mom worked in the kitchen. My great-grandma worked in the kitchen, my dad's mom. And I worked in the kitchen, too. And it was a huge culture shock for me because I went from San Diego, which I love my California roots, and moved to Jay, Florida, which is a complete cotton field, like total hick town,
Right.
And so it was a culture shock for me, and then I had to go to church 3 times a week living there and attend the Christian school there, which were the ACE, homeschool studies. A lot of different Christian schools use that, which is not recommended. They're not very, I don't know the word for it. They don't teach you much. They're very Bible-based as well. So I kind of grew up on the property in my high school years. I worked there kind of like a junior staff type thing. So I would literally get up in the morning sometimes at 5, go into the kitchen for my mom if I took breakfast duties, and we would cook, and the girls would do devotionals and stuff like that, and then we would do breakfast and then get ready for school after that and clean up and all that. We were cooking for like almost 100 girls every day.
I'm curious.
And so I was saying, some of the girls' stories about the torture camp thing, that's what it really bothers me to hear of how they were forced for manual labor, because that just simply is not true. That's one of the biggest misconceptions I'm hearing. To go outside and work, quote unquote work, that was a volunteer-based thing. And we had male staff who were the outdoor, maintenance men of the property who did everyday activities outside. They were the ones that built things. They were the ones that orchestrated things. And then they would go into school during the day and get a volunteer list to see who would like to go outside and work on stuff like cleaning the pool, yardscape duty. When Mackenzie, who I'm friends with, and we share a lot of commonalities, but I told her that I'm going to be, speaking my truth on some of these issues. When she was referring to the waterfall being built, they had koi ponds in the back by the pool, and they were stacking little stones. So to me, I wouldn't say that would be manual labor forced upon. It was all volunteer-based. If you didn't want to do that, you worked inside, which was cleaning bathrooms if you were on the laundry duty, or vacuuming the chapel if you were on chapel duty, or cleaning tables in the laundry room. I mean, it was all light housework type stuff. No one was getting crazy in between things, and we were actually doing that. We would do that in the kitchen. I would be up on, in the rafters, like scrubbing out the ceilings and stuff because we had standards to be held by. We had health inspectors coming out regularly. We had safety inspectors coming out regularly. We had, if anyone had any kind of, child abuse claims, people were allowed to come out to the school. That's another misconception. People acted like it was completely unregulated. Whatever could happen just goes down out there. That's not how it was because it was regulated, definitely.
Okay.
And I don't think the girls saw maybe the inspectors coming out, but we were actually joking because I remember the name of one of the health inspectors. We used to tease him because he was a total, what's the word, stickler. And he would come out and be super strict about stuff and, total unnecessary stuff. But we were, we had strict guidelines. The school was, up to par. It was super clean, always beautiful. And, no, the girls did not build the school. The school was built by construction workers, male staff, and then the girls helped with the lighter duties. And I actually was part of that all the time. I would go outside every Thursday, and I would do landscaping, and then I would go into the school and look at the little roster of who's done for the day, and whoever was done was allowed to go outside and do landscaping if they wanted to. And I had friends all the time over there, so they would volunteer to come outside with me, and then we would just do that. You know what I mean? So, and they were also outside every Saturday as well. Every Saturday was outside day. They could play softball, walk the property. They had free reign of the property to walk around. There was no gates that were keeping them inside. They had benches. We had little pecan trees all over, so we'd go pick up pecans. They had a pool. We would do Saturday pool day, and everyone could go swimming, and we would barbecue, that kind of thing. So there were tons of recreational activities. They were completely allowed outside. There was no forced manual labor, and that was one of the biggest misconceptions I wanted to clear up because that was simply untrue.
Okay. When you say that the girls did light work, they didn't do any construction at all? They didn't use hammers and nails and work with the wood or anything like that?
Absolutely not. I mean,
okay.
if they were outside and there was male staff working on, the only real construction we had going on at any time was a small deck that we started building after the school was finished. There was little construction things going on throughout the years, but they weren't done by the girls. When the school was first built, it was just an original little brick, 5-bedroom, I believe. Old school, super classical, looking house. And they built onto it. They built a huge chapel that was completely construction. The girls never did any of the chapel. They built a gigantic dorm, 5 different dorms actually, and those were all construction work. The girls weren't even in the home when people were doing all that. They built a huge school onto the property. That was all construction workers. Girls never were there to even, do any kind of manual labor. So, I mean, light housework, I was doing exactly like I said, cleaning toilets, doing laundry, vacuuming, that exact same thing. So, I'm not sure if a girl maybe hammered a nail outside, but there was no reason to because we didn't have construction projects like that happening. The waterfall Mackenzie was referring to was a literal koi pond next to the pool, and they were stacking these little stones. So and she did scrub out fountains in the front. So there was a little fountain, probably 4 feet wide, 4 feet down, I don't know. Okay. And we all scrubbed that out, time to time. But it was kind of like the chores, for them. Which, and I implore these girls and how they felt, 100%. I was there with them. I felt the exact same way. It sucks to be there. Who wants to be on a property where you're preached at constantly, where you have to go to church 3 times a day, where you have these, Bible-thumping staff over you who are unskilled in mental health and just want to, push the Bible down your throat? Nobody really wants that. And it's not fun. Yeah. But a huge thing that confused about this is the school was based for troubled girls, real troubled girls. Not I skipped school and had a secret boyfriend and got sent away. That's not what the school is for. The school was fundamentally for gang members, prostitutes, and we did take all of those girls from the streets a lot of the time. These girls were court-ordered here, for instead of going to juvie, they would go here. So I think a huge problem was with what a lot of these girls have issues with the school is those girls were not supposed to be at the school. It was not made for them, We took, like I said, prostitutes off the street from their pimps. We took people from gangs. We took girls who were trying to beat up their parents on a regular basis, who would abuse their grandparents, who were court-ordered. So girls that came who were, still, like Mackenzie was saying, she was still a virgin and she just had problems in school. The school was not for her, and she definitely should not have been there. And I feel for the girls that had that problem. But I see a huge commonality from the girls that were, in gangs and stuff like that and who turned their life around and who were happy after they left school versus the girls who didn't really have issues before. So they were like, I got sent there for nothing, and it really messed me up. And I feel for that, but that was not what the school was made for. And so that was a fluke, you know what I mean?
Right. Some just slipped through the cracks. I know what you mean.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for the girls who were supposed to be there, they didn't have problems. I mean, they did not like the rules just like anybody else. But girls that had real trouble before the school, I just heard a lot of more positivity come out of their experience and after in their lives than versus the ones who really were sent there. Even some of the ones that were sent there for nothing still have not much negative to say, but it depends who you talk to. I've heard it all. I've been out of the school since 2007, and I share a lot of their grievances. Honestly, I have the same issues they did. I didn't like most of the staff, 90%, maybe 80% I would say I disliked. 20% I made good friends with and I still talk to this day. But the staff were just very unskilled with mental health, and that was one of my biggest, grievances too. After I left the school, I was always just like, man, I wish they would have more professional counselors there for girls that really were troubled. The reason they were there is because they had so many different issues, mental health-wise, Some of them came from after being raped, and these staff members did not understand how to work with people like that. These people were sheltered Christian, Southern Baptist type who never experienced life, didn't have any kind of, life issue to give them this experience to help other people. And they definitely weren't skilled in the mental health area because a lot of these Southern Baptist ways do not believe in mental health help or medication, which is completely ridiculous. I am totally against that. And they couldn't help the girls correctly. A lot of these girls came from medications and needed help, like Mackenzie having to wean off of her medication. That was terrible, and she should not have had to go through that. But they didn't allow medications like that at the school, and so the school was definitely not for someone like her.
Right. Were you there when they did the flooring?
Yes, they did the flooring, and see, that's another thing that's kind of like a weird... Okay, so there's girls there, like I said, that were violent before.
Okay.
We've had outbursts from girls who try to kill themselves. We've had girls try to hurt other people. We've had girls punch staff in the face. We've had girls, slice their thighs and wrists up. So for that kind of incident, they need to be contained. But I would never suggest, let's just all dogpile on someone for the reasons that they've used it. So I should say that the reason it was created or the reason they have that rule was made for a reason, and it was abused by helpers and people in position that it should not have been. So 100%. Should they have tried to threatened to floor Mackenzie for saying F that, I don't want to do schoolwork? No, of course not. But there were some times when it was necessary and girls needed to be taken into an isolation because they were a danger to other girls. And a lot of people did not see that. They didn't see incidences of girls coming in that were violent because it was all, behind the scenes. And then they would see the girl being, taken to the room to sit, but they wouldn't see what just happened behind the scenes or slapping, people across the face, screaming and spitting, coming in, saying, screaming to everyone. And I've seen that a million times. That was normal for me. So that's why I was like, what do you expect them to do in that situation? They have a mentally unstable girl their parents brought there, or, they were brought there, pissed off, which is warranted. They don't know where they're at. They're like, where the hell am I? How long am I here? What's going on? Some of them were violent. So were we supposed to just let them out with the other girls to go crazy or, you know, try to run, scream, kick whoever they want? Or do they go in isolation, you know? I was like, they were never constrained. Like, there was never any kind of tape. I saw things where people said they were taped to a chair. Never in my life have I ever witnessed anyone being taped to a chair at Victory Christian Academy in my 7 years of being there. Nor can you talk to anyone that was with me that would say they were taped to a chair. They were never put in a straitjacket, yet they were still spitting, screaming, kicking. They would find any kind of little device to try to hurt themselves with, whether it be, you know, even safety pins was a big issue. Because they were in school, they would try to take the safety pins and go, you know, hold it for whenever they wanted to hurt someone or hurt themselves at night. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was like another safety risk. That's what the girls don't hear. All they hear is, this girl was dragged to the get right room, and it was torture. It's like, you didn't hear what just happened behind the scenes. She's over here kicking, spinning, punching, and screaming. I mean, what did you expect her to do? Like, sit here with the rest of the general population and let her go hurt someone else or hurt one of the girls and then be liable for that as well? Like, that's a huge thing I don't think the girls understand as much. Now, once again, there are people there that abuse that privilege. So if someone was eating their food for a month, they would get put there so they could eat their food. That so much isn't, I don't think they should abuse it for those reasons, but the majority of the girls in that room were violent or a danger to themselves or others, basically.
Were any of the girls made to eat their own vomit?
No. What Mackenzie meant by that was, and I had a conversation with her after this podcast, because I listened to it, and I was like, what are you talking about? She told me that she had thrown up in her mouth, and that she couldn't swallow it, and the helper that was next to her said, you better swallow that or you're getting lines. So that right there was an abuse of power on the helper. She should have never told her that. But no one sat there and made her throw up and eat it. That never happened. Girls had food issues a lot coming there because their main objective would be like, I'm not going to eat for a month and starve myself, and F you, what are you going to do about it, you know? That was their protest, basically, which would have been fine, but a lot of girls had eating disorders, bulimia, anorexia, and so they would lose weight, and it would be healthy. And the only way for them to get them to force them to eat their food was to either put them in the get right room or threaten them some other how, I don't know. Now, whether they should have done that or not, that's not up to me to say. I probably wouldn't have done that route. But no one had ever been forced to eat their own throw up. I never witnessed that. That was crazy to hear. So I guess by her swallowing her own throw up in her mouth, that's what she meant. I guess you can take that as you please.
Right. Were you ever in the get right room?
No.
No.
I mean, I was living there kind of by will, kind of not by will.
Okay. So you were pretty much compliant with all that.
Was I ever in there watching? Yes, all the time. Sorry, I thought you meant actually in there as like being forced in there.
Yeah, that's
no,
what I meant. That's what I meant.
No, I was never forced into there, no. I was a good little kid because I was a scared little, Baptist Christian girl who went by what her parents wanted her to do for a long time.
Right.
Sometimes, my real personality would bust out, and I would open my mouth and say, this isn't fair, this isn't right, we need to change this, you shouldn't be doing this. And it helped me make my voice to what it is today because I was silenced a lot of my life, and so I think that's why I'm a little more outspoken and spunkier because I kind of broke against that,
Right. Do you still go to church and all that?
No.
No.
I am completely anti-religion. and have been for years.
Yes, and a lot of girls...
I didn't quit when I would sit in church, so I didn't believe what I was hearing then. I didn't agree to most of it. And the entire time I would be thinking, this isn't, no, I don't subscribe to this.
Some of the girls
I was waiting for that thing to get older.
Right. Some of the girls I've talked to, they can't step foot in a church anymore. It makes them sick to the stomach.
Yeah. I've known a lot of people like that, and not even just in the girls' school. It's the Baptist religion that is so harsh, and so the Southern Baptists especially.
Yeah, the fundamental Baptists. Those are the...
Yeah, yes. It's off the hook. I don't even know how... I would never in a million years subject my children to that. And so I get that. I get the trauma that comes with it, 100%. I am fully there for the girls and, help them work through their traumas with the school. I understand it 100%. I had nightmares myself leaving the school. I used to think, my mom's putting me back in, and then, oh my gosh, I have to go back. I hated a lot of aspects of it. I hated going to church. I hated most of it, I should say. But there were a lot of fun times. There were a lot of good times with all of the girls. They tried to make it as happy as possible, considering the circumstances. We'd have, Friday night, fun night every single Friday. And if you were, behaving that week, quote unquote behaving, or, you did your schoolwork, Friday nights there would be a theme of some sort. So we'd have like 50s night. We'd all like dress like sock hop and like listen to 50s music and perform like little skits and plays, and they'd be able to eat like desserts and have as much candy as they wanted, all that kind of stuff. And then like they do international night. We would have we would learn from a different country, different foods, and everyone would have their own country, and then we would like have our little area for everyone to come eat different foods from that area.
What kind of movies?
We have all different. The movies, actually, I like to say, had gotten better since I had been on the property, because when I was little, they were not allowed to watch anything but really old school movies, preaching type movies. And when I used to be on the property, I'd tell my grandma, like, why are you making these girls watch this stuff? Like, they should at least be allowed to watch PG/PG-13 movies if you're trying to keep it, whatever, PC in the school if you don't want them to see it. So we would watch Disney movies or, I don't know how to explain it, like PG or PG-13 sometimes. Sometimes we'd get a PG-13 in there. I would sneak certain movies in when they weren't looking and let them, try to get them to watch different movies that they weren't allowed to watch usually. I tried to push a lot. Tried to push the boundaries of the school a lot.
Well, they all did, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So.
Well, some of them, did submit to it and give in to everything and just do what they wanted them to do. And some people liked that, some people hated that, and I don't know. Everyone was different. Every experience was super different for every girl. It just depended on their, emotional stability, the way they handled situations. Every experience is going to be completely different. That's why I can't say, they're lying.
Every experience is different.
Yeah. So when someone says, I force-feed my own vomit and the color yellow traumatized me from having to wear that, that's your prerogative and that's your emotional trauma and that's your right to own, I completely support the girls for whatever, grievances they have. But like I said, certain things that were said, I just wanted to clear up. There was no forced manual labor. So if you have trauma from having to scrub the fountain out or having to clean the pool, I'll completely own that. But there was no forced
manual there was a girl had died. She got, I guess some lumber fell on her.
It was clear knowledge. Everyone in the school I was there knows about that story and was told that story a million times. And they had messages and preaching on that story, and they have a special song that one of the girls wrote for them. They sing it in honor of her every year. Everyone knows about that. That's definitely not a secret.
Right, but lumber fell on her, so it kind of sounds like they were doing construction, or she was just in the way. I don't know. I wasn't.
Yeah, she was in the area. She was in the area of the construction going on. There was, Mackenzie was 100% right. There was a donkey that was built that was holding stacked wood, and she happened to be in that area when it broke, and it broke behind her. So that was in the 80s, 86, 87, I believe. A lot of stuff was different. It was a remote school. I wasn't even born yet. I did hear the same story from a lot of people, and not just, pro-victory, even anti-victory. They all had the same story. People that had worked at the school. My mom, who was not pro-victory either, she said the same thing. She was there when it happened. She was actually really good friends with her when it happened, and she was kind of traumatized by that. But, OSHA came out and investigated the child labor, and it was clear there was no child manual labor happening. So when they say, there was no investigation, nothing was happening, OSHA came out. It was California. Even in the 80s, California had their strict guidelines, compared to Florida. And so they did an investigation. They asked the parents if they wanted to sue. The parents declined, and they actually had my grandfather do the funeral because they were such big fans of the school. So that happened. I can't say if that was the right or the wrong thing. That's what the parents decided to do. It was a terrible situation. Can't even believe that happened. It was horrible to hear, But I've heard of the situation my entire life.
Yeah. So why did the home close?
The home closed because of the strict regulations that Mike Palmer didn't want to go by. That's what I heard from him specifically. Okay. There were certain things, I'm not exactly sure what. Like I said, they were regulated in Florida as well. People were in and out all the time doing different things, checking firewalls, checking safety things, checking the kitchen for cleanliness, checking a lot of different things. Monthly, we would have monthly visitors on the property. So I'm not sure the exact law of what he didn't want to pay taxes, or I'm pretty sure it was some business thing he had an issue with. I don't think he wanted to pay taxes or something, or certain things he didn't want the government involved in. He's Southern Baptist, anti-government, blah, 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 nonsense. So he moved to school in the 80s to Jay, Florida, where he could, I don't know, I'm really not sure about that one.
What's funny is the fact that he would have a school in such a liberal state.
I know.
Usually they have it in a conservative state where there's a lot of Christian rights.
Well, he's from California. All of us are. We're all from California, which is crazy how he came out of that, because he's technically from Iowa, him and his family. He grew up there, but I don't know how he ended up in California in his 20s, I think. That's where they ended up settling or something. I can't remember the exact history, but for someone who is so he is completely anti-liberal, and he completely lived in California and loved it for years, which I never understood, and I still don't understand today.
Well, when he moved to Florida, he moved to the right state, because Florida is a conservative state.
Yeah.
So, but I know there was also...
And the Mexico school as well.
I'm sorry,
I was going to say the Mexico school as well. There were some inconsistencies with that. They weren't closed down because there was a holding cell for girls. That was a complete inaccuracy. If you actually read the LA Times about the schools being shut down, they said that they found no reason to shut them down. Literally, the federales went in there because they wanted to take over the property 100%. And they had no valid reason to do that, and they shut the school down. And there were no girls crying. That's another inaccuracy. There were no girls crying at night that the neighbors would hear, because if you went to the Mexico school, there were no neighbors. It was a complete, isolated, gigantic lot on the cliff of an ocean. It was a beautiful property, but there's a lot of land, and there was no neighbors around. There was a huge wall with glass on it to protect the girls from anyone coming in, because it was in Mexico, Baja, and it's not a, quote unquote, it's not as safe as, being in the United States. So they had that. Also, girls wouldn't want to run in Mexico, because there was actually a girl did run before, and she got extremely injured on the street. So that was like a scary thing. So no one really ran there, and it wasn't a threat, but no one was crying all night. I don't know where that story came. A lot of these rumors get repeated by so-and-so, and then so-and-so hears them and repeats them, and then it becomes public knowledge that this is what happened. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not true. And I'm not here to defend the school. Once again, I have no reason to. I have no relationship with Mike Palmer, and I haven't for 10, 15 years. I don't have much to do with him at all. I don't ever want anything to do with him. He's a crazy weirdo in my eyes. I'm a complete anti what he is. I'm liberal Californian. He's completely opposite of what I am.
Right. He's still alive, right? He's still alive.
I think so. I think he's still kicking, unfortunately. We're waiting for the fall.
Now, did you hear any instances of a rape allegation?
Yes, there was a rape allegation made later, 20 years after the actual incident. In 95, there was a girl there that had a relationship with Mike Walmer. She was 16 or 17, I believe, which is considered, so what's the term for it?
Statutory.
Statutory rape, yes. Yes. In the 90s, she wanted to be with him and was actually brainwashed by him, I believe. And when she left the school, her parents were going to let them be together. There's just a lot of weird instances that happened with that story. 20 years later, she came back to the school and said she was raped by him. And I completely stand by her allegations and support her. And, whether you had a consensual relationship at 16 or not, that's a statutory rape, and she deserves, she should have sued him and won, I feel.
Yeah,
and I would love to see him in jail for that.
The statute of limitations had already run out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't comment on too much of it because I was even more old. I was probably 3 years old at the time when it happened.
Right.
But as far as that goes, there was never any other incidences too. And I think after that, in '93, when it happened, he stepped away from the school, just doing the average day-to-day duties. He was not around, and like Mackenzie's interactions with him, that was really surprising because that was probably as much interaction with the girl as he's had in that school, and they will ever tell you, because he was not around from that point, from the 01 to the 07 that we lived there. He was constantly on business travel. He was gone. He lived in his house, which was across from the girls' school, and never was at the school property like that. He would come over to preach sermons certain nights when they needed him, because they would kind of alternate preachers.
Right.
Because everyone's a preacher in the Southern Baptist religion,
Yes.
Everyone's a preacher. And so they would have him come over and do sermons, and then he would come over on Sundays, I remember, just to eat lunch and go back to his house. He was taking care of my grandma a lot. So he was not at the school like that. There was no other sexual allegations, and that's another thing that bothers me, because beyond that incident with the girl, there was nothing ever that came about. There was no other allegation. There was no rape, molestation. No one got raped at Victory Christian Academy. I mean, unless we're talking about the statutory with Rebecca Ramirez. So if that's what happened, with them.
I'll tell you the one thing.
From 95 on, I think there was no.
The one thing that was criminal was the fact that they had Lester Roloff sermons blasting all the time.
Oh yeah. They had them. They're right. They did put them on in the Get Right room. Oh my God! I would tell the guy, I would go in there and be like, "Switch it up, dude. This is like too much." It's crazy. I am completely anti Southern Baptist anything, and I remember being just as in pain as those girls, having to listen to the sermons, the sermon preaching tapes, the Christian music tapes. I hate Christian music now. And it's because of the girls' school, because I was forced it down my throat. And not just by the girls' school, my parents, They were on the strict Southern Baptist agenda since I was little, and we weren't allowed to listen to our, quote-unquote worldly music till I was in my teens. And I was like, we kind of just started doing our own thing. Once my parents divorced, they kind of gave up on trying to shove the Baptist agenda down our throat. And so I took full advantage of that. And I was like, done.
Okay. Well, so why were you at the home? Did you have problems with drugs or anything like that, or? No,
I was literally just on as a student there. I was pretty much like the rest of them that said that they were sent there for nothing. It was just circumstance because my parents worked there, so.
Right.
They were there. My dad did the transports a lot, where he would be the one that would pick the girls up and take them to the school.
Okay.
And my mom worked in the kitchen nonstop. We ran that kitchen for years and years. And so that's also when I hear them say that no one was ever in the kitchen but the girls working. No one was ever doing landscaping but the girls. I was like, what? Just no. I think a lot of memories are maybe botched for these people because of maybe the trauma that they had, Sometimes when you experience trauma, your memory doesn't really recollect things that accurately. So there was never girls running the kitchen by themselves, ever. That would have been like a super dangerous thing.
Right. Well, is there anything else you want to say?
I don't know. I was thinking I wanted to touch on a lot of different aspects on that I disagreed with, but also that I did agree with. I can't remember a lot of other stuff that
Right.
we were talking about before.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. So I guess I just wanted to, make it known to all the girls that will be listening to this that, if they ever need to, seek any kind of therapeutic closure to their lives or anything, they can always, contact me. I'm around, and I'm always friends with a lot of these girls from the victory boards. I'm in some of the rooms where they're talking and stuff like that, so they know how to find me on Facebook. But I just hope that they can find closure for their lives, and I just wish that they could have had a better experience when it came to someone to help them. Like, a lot of these girls didn't deserve to have to deal with Southern Baptist mentality, And then the staff, like I said, were completely inexperienced when dealing with mental health issues. They deserved a therapist. They deserved so much more, and I wish I could have done so much more for them. And, I tried so many different times to get different things, passed at the school. There was no board as well. Like, when I said that Mike was the chair of the board of Victory, he was just the owner completely of both schools. Oh, and the school, another misconception was the school was never shut down because of regulations and stuff in 2008 or 7. What had happened was my grandma had flipped her excursion in 2002 or 3, and it kind of jump-started her sickness. She had really bad Alzheimer's. She had a lot of health issues, and her health started to decline quickly. And so Mike took care of her a lot of those times. That's why he wasn't at the girls' school as well. He was stepped away for a long time. And while she was recovering and stuff, the Alzheimer's was really taking a toll on her. It was just disintegrating her brain and all that. She couldn't do a lot. She couldn't even drive herself anymore. So they employed, when the Baja school got shut down, the Cookstons, who I can't really comment on their style. I've heard negative things about the school from girls that went to school there. I've heard they're a lot more strict than Victory Christian was. They came to run the school. My grandparents employed them to run the school for them. And my grandparents went to Iowa to live for a while, and they were back and forth, So they still owned all the property in schools, but they let the Cookstons run it. And the Cookstons were not paying property taxes and a lot of other things. Their business mindset was in the toilet compared to how it had been. So the school went from flourishing 100 girls to 30. And I would go back and forth to talk to all of them and be like, how's it going? They hated it. The girls were like, oh, my God, it's so much worse since they took over. The ladies in the kitchen didn't know how to cook, so they were really complaining about the food after that. I felt for them. And so he didn't, and then the whole deterioration of the school, too. It was shocking to see how beautiful the property was to how it turned in almost a year's time. I would come back and visit and be like, what is going on? There's paint chipping off the walls, the boards are messed up on the floors, and the landscaping wasn't being taken care of. He just really let the school go to hell, And so he also didn't know how to manage it financially, so there was 20, 30 girls at one point, and then they started to be broke. And I guess Mike got the word that the Cookstons didn't pay the property taxes that they were supposed to be paying the whole time they were on the school property. So when they went to close the school down with the financial issues, Mike Palmer owed $1 million plus in property taxes.
Wow.
Which was hilarious to me. He had to pay. So he actually sold the school for, I think it was only $1 million, which is crazy to me because if you saw that property, it was a huge, beautiful property that in California would be $10 million property. And someone actually paid only $1 million for it. And I think Mike pretty much broke even, or even then owes some more from the Cookstons, which I think is total karma because my grandparents worked their entire lives, Not for my grandma because she had a kind soul and she did not deserve being married to such a POS of a person. But she worked her whole life, and he worked his whole life, financially, and they were stable. They were super well off for a long time, and he's experiencing his karma right now to the max, because not only did he get broke from, Russ Cookson not paying, not managing his finances better, but I hear he's married to a Russian bride right now who's breaking him as well. He's involved in a lot of lawsuits, and he is going broke. Can't even afford a house now, which is hilarious to me. I hope some girls find comfort in that. And he,
well, I mean,
he's not living the life that he thought he would be at this age. So,
just the Russian bride alone would break you.
The Russian bride and her 40-year-old son, that's breaking.
Oh,
that's the crazy part. So I think it's hilarious to me.
Well, I think they would find comfort in that. I think find some humor.
So
and
find comfort. Mike Palmer is not happy and living life right now. He's probably hating his life, which is great.
All right. Well, Elena, thank you for being on. I appreciate it. To tell you the truth, when you said you wanted to come on, I thought it was going to be a little bit more coarse,
defensive,
I guess is the word. But it turned out to be not so bad. Yeah. I mean, you spoke. You spoke your opinions. You know what I mean? And not only you disagree, you also agree. So it all kind of balances out in the end. So
yeah, and I don't want to invalidate any girl's experience and make them feel like they're liars or anything like that. The most I want them to take is just some healing, and I don't know. I just want them to find closure, because a lot of girls, I can tell, are still really, traumatized, and I shouldn't say a lot because I know a lot and they're not traumatized,
right.
But there are some that are traumatized, and I want them to find closure, and I want them to, seek help for whatever they're struggling with. And I think a lot of it is because they were, so blindsided and so like, oh my God, I'm sent to this reform school. But it's like the same type of, I feel like it's the same type of harsh punishment you see on like Dr. Phil, where they send them to what is that show called, where they have to send the bad kids.
Beyond Scared Straight,
yes.
or something like that? Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but there's no drill sergeant yelling in your ear. There's just like some Bible verses being thrown at you, which you don't want to hear. So I get where the trauma comes from, like the rules are strict, but to call it torture camp that's where I have an issue. I mean, that would mean that there was just like complete torture going on a regular basis. If you want to call torture Bible verses, I'm 100% on board.
Yeah.
Thrown at you regularly. But yeah, I just want them to find closure.
I get you. Like I said, I wasn't there, and I don't tell these girls what to say. I mean, I just let them speak their minds. You know what I mean? Just go at
totally.
it. So, but
all right.
Anyway, thank you, Elena, for being here. I appreciate it. Take care of yourself, okay?
Thank you. You too.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I want to thank everybody for listening today. Now, I must say, just because somebody has a different version of what happened doesn't mean it didn't happen. Everybody deals with life in a different way, and that person should not be judged or ridiculed because they perceived life at Victory Christian Academy differently than others. Circumstances like these require understanding, respect, and most importantly, a love for that particular individual. Because when you break it down, I mean really get down to the lowest point of the sewer, all the hate and disgust should be focused on one person, Michael Palmer. Now, somebody asked me once, maybe Michael Palmer was brainwashed as well and couldn't help himself. He thought he was doing the Lord's work. Well, that doesn't excuse it. It doesn't excuse the amount of pain, sorrow, and mental anguish that was inflicted on these girls, each one at a different level. Now, one would ask, if Lester Roloff were alive today, Would he be disgusted with what his legacy has become? Or would he pat them on the shoulder, give them a hug, and tell them, "Good job, God would be pleased"? If it's the latter, then his legacy should not be allowed to survive. Judith Lewis Herman wrote, "In order to escape accountability for his crimes, the perpetrator does everything in his power to promote forgetting. If secrecy fails, the perpetrator attacks the credibility of his victim. If he cannot silence her absolutely, he tries to make sure no one listens. And all the minions of Lester Roloff's ideology should be held accountable." For the Hammer Podcast, I'm Jason. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.